Well, could you walk us through just a little bit of that process of the home buyer? So if I'm coming in, I'm buying the house with you, what's my process look like when I meet with you to start buying a first time home?
Well, first we say we get in touch with a loan officer, and I have a guy I've worked with that I love. I mean, trust my life with, and I know I'll get it done at 10 o'clock Sunday night if you need him.
Mm-hmm.
We actually, well, I don't want to, he saved a deal once because he was involved at the beginning. But anyhow, so first of all, get the financing together. Make sure you know what it is, because I have had people who are looking at $800,000 houses and then realize that they're, we looked maybe 3 or 4 or 5 homes. I don't do this anymore, but I did. And they were, we can only afford 600,000. So we want to get that set up. So the expectations there is clarity there. You know what your loan's going to be, and you know where you're going to be. So that's the very first thing, is to get set up. And yeah. And if needed, I can give someone 3 options.
Sure.
For loan people. But like before COVID, me and my team were doing 100 properties a year. Right. So we know, I've got the experience to know who's going to work in.
Right. You don't need to talk to 3 people if you know the right person to talk to.
Oh, right. But if they want some options, I'm happy to do that. There's like these big internet companies, that I'm not going to name names, but online, forget it. Oh my gosh. If I have 2 offers in front of me, and one is from, XYZ National Corporation, advertises nationally, blah, 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 and someone I know that they'll get the job done, I will advise the client to go with on these offers. That's when I'm representing the seller, right?
Right.
To go with the stronger offer that I know will get it done. But anyhow, so here we are, and the roadmap again kind of is then we kind of say, what is it you want in a home? What's important? So I listen. I take notes. Very important. I take notes on listings too, because I want to make sure I get it right for them. And then we go over some brief stuff, like what's a short sale, and there's hardly any anymore, but those are people who are way behind on their mortgage payment. So we get some definitions. We also talk about if you go to an open house, just say, hey, I'm represented by Don Hale. Just so you know when you go, because I prefer that when I do an open house that people tell me, I've got an agent. But if they see we look for all the for sale by owners out there to help my client. I tell them, if you see a for sale by owner, please call me, because sometimes they're way out. They have no idea what's going on. Or they might advertise 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, but their septic's only good for 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. And there's a lot of things in there. So, look if you see somebody you're driving by, you see one, photograph the information, and I'll call them if I haven't already brought that person to them. Right. And then I represent, and I also tell them legally, I represent you. Okay?
Right.
I am got your back, and I fiduciarily, statutorily, and more importantly, as we said, morally, I represent you. I'm not going to say, if we're looking at a $550,000 house, I'm not going to say, well, my buyer could pay $595.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play that hand. I'm going to be very smart about the negotiation part. So they know.
That part matters a lot, like with anything, right? So I don't know if I've told you this story before, but when my wife and I bought our house, we bought our house when we were pretty young.
Yeah.
But before we did, we had went and got a real estate agent, and because we were like, well, that's what you should do, and we wanted to told him what we wanted to spend, and this is where we feel comfortable, and so he had us get pre-approved with his guy, which was fine, which is good, right?
Yeah.
But then he would only show us, and we were approved for more than what we wanted to spend, but I'm pretty conservative in how I spend money, because I'm like, well, just because I make that much money today doesn't mean I'll make that much money next year. And what if something changes? And so I want to be comfortable.
Entrepreneurship, by the way. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I want to be comfortable in my payments. I don't want to be like, oh no, I gotta max out my what I'm paying. And so he would only show us garbage dumps inside of the price range that we looked at. But then he would show us nice houses that were outside of what we wanted but inside of what we could afford.
Right.
And ultimately we ended up firing him and going a different route because we realized that moral integrity wasn't there. And I think that people forget like that moral integrity, probably when you're looking at who you're working with, you're going to work with a realtor, to work with somebody like you that has that, I'm going to do the right thing for my customer, not because I'm going to make more money, but just because it's the right thing. And whatever I make or don't make doesn't really matter. Doesn't come into play when
Not
you're
at all,
making that
really.
negotiation, right?
Yeah.
And if you make a mistake, you're like, hey, I screwed up. Here's your earnest money back. Like those sort of things are huge.
Yeah.
And I think like when somebody's looking around, just like, who do I work with? Working with somebody like that is going to make or break your deals. And you don't want buyer's remorse on a house, right?
Oh gosh, no.
You don't want to be like, hey, my realtor talked me into buying this. It wasn't really what I wanted. It was more than I could afford, but I bought it. And now you're in a 30-year mortgage.
Oh, and I've had that conversation many times. I say, hey, this is okay. Are you ready for that? Are you ready for what might happen?
Yeah.
You know? And I kind of go over it one last time because in that whole process, again, I go over the contract, right? We talk about, okay, here's earnest money. Here's, when it's going to close. And here, if you want to you have 10 days for an inspection, for example, right? So that's if you have buyer's remorse, let's talk about it. Some people do get real psyched.
Sure.
And you talk them down saying, no, this makes sense. It's in your price range. It's in a good neighborhood. It's not quite as big a house as you want, but this makes sense just from my perspective.
Right.
Right. And
it's good to have somebody that's helping you walk through that process, manage the emotions that you feel confident is there for your good, not for their pocketbook.
Objective.
Yeah.
Being objective.
You mentioned an inspection there. What are some of the keys when somebody's looking at an inspection that you should really pay attention to?
Oh boy. I'm going to answer this differently. What are the common things that come wrong? Okay. So some of the common things is having the, if septic inspected, of course, but when we have this inspection in front of us, here's an inspector, a certified inspector has come in and said, hey, here's 10 things with the house. So we look at safety first. We also look at what the appraiser from the bank comes and says, oh yeah, we will lend it. So there's another inspection. So we'll make sure we have those things taken care of. Lots of times, not lots of times, but sometimes, for example, if a FHA loan, they can't have any wood showing on the house outside. So I've done it actually. The clients have done it with permission from the owner. Can we go paint the house a little bit? Right.
Yeah.
But the heating is a real common one that needs attention. Usually people have not had it inspected in years.
Right.
And then anything safety wise. Hey, we got some rod on the back deck, with a little kid fall through or something. Usually it's not a bigger issue for safety, but that's number one. Number two is a common one is the drains will drain back into the foundation of the house. That's a good question. I have to think about what are some of the common ones. A GFCI plug will not be grounded. That happens a lot. So we have asked for a certified, we'll say, please have a certified electrician correct this.
Yeah, the electrical is an issue. Like I from insurance perspective, right? Knob and tube wiring and aluminum wiring.
Yeah.
So you get away from knob and tube, then you went into a lot of places were using aluminum in the 60s even. And so you're like, okay, it's not knob and tube, but it's aluminum. Yeah. And the issue that you run into, I was talking with an electrician friend of mine about this. He said the issue is not knob and tube and or aluminum. It's not like it was bad wiring.
Right.
It's that it was wired for a different type of lifestyle. So, and as I thought about this, like, it makes some good points. He's like, so you rewind back into like the 40s when knob and tube was very common.
Yeah.
And they had fuses. He said typically you would have one light in the middle of the room and you would have maybe a lamp. TV was just becoming a thing. Vacuum cleaners were not even super common. Yeah. But you would have maybe a vacuum cleaner. Now the amount of draw that we put through that wiring is 10,
substantial.
20, 30 times more electricity that we're pulling through those wires.
Yeah.
And so to his point is like, the issue is that how much electricity we use now comparatively with, air conditioners.
Right.
Everybody has a TV in every room. You have, Roombas and, tablets and cell phones and microwaves, and like just modern technology is very electric centered.
Yep.
And so he said the problem is you pull so much power through those wires that they overheat in the wall and they start a fire.
Yeah.
So if you lived like 1940, you'd probably be fine with knob and tube wiring.
Right.
But the problem is you're living like it's 2024 with wiring that was meant for the 1940s.
Yes. And I've sold those older homes. Actually, the banks, depending on the loan, et cetera, some of the banks will still accept knob and tube.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's just, I will make sure they understand all the implications and recommend at some point they change it out.
Yeah.
Or make, in the inspection, have the owner, but that's very expensive, but it depends on the deal. They might say, no, I'm not going to change it. Okay, see you, bye.
Right.
We pull out. Right.
It's something to be aware of, it because on the insurance side, it definitely impacts insurance as well. Now, some people are not honest with their insurance company about knob and tube wiring, which can, depending on the company, make a problem for you later, because then it's a
interesting. Yeah.
Because if they ask that through the application process, whether you answer it wrong or your agent answered it wrong, it could be it's a material misrepresentation. So let's say the application asks, is there any knob and tube wiring? And I say, no, there's not any knob and tube wiring, but there is. The insurance company then, after the fact, when there's a fire and the house burns down, the insurance company goes, well, we should have never insured that house, and we would not have if you'd been honest with us. So that's a material misrepresentation,
right?
And it voids the insurance contract. They refund you your premium, and you have no coverage.
Yeah.
So that's like that. Some people are like, oh, we just what they don't know won't hurt us. It's like, well, actually it could. Right. So you have to be careful on some of those things. But there's companies that do insurance for knob and tube. I'm not saying it's an uninsurable risk. It's just something that you have to be careful and honest about, because it could change how a claim gets settled.
The aluminum is mainly in mobile homes.
Yeah.
And before 78, it's very difficult to get financing because of that and some other things involved.
Yeah.
They changed it. And,
How is mobile homes, so after 78, so the 90s, 2000s, how is that as far as buying a mobile home on property? Is that difficult?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, it's great. It's just not before 78. That's very difficult before 78. They're specialty companies, but they're hard to get a hold of and usually out of state. So yeah, no, but no, after 78, it's very common, very easy.
Okay.
There's a couple of things that are not normal, with a normal house, but easily overcome.